Welcome back to another unhinged rant about AOTP. At the end of my recent colored tier list series, I received a request from a user by the name of Ray O'Connell, begging and pleading with me to make a full tier list. In benevolence, I decided to go along with his request, to an extent. The AOTP squad of users on Discord caught wind of this early, and join us if you haven't already. Links are in the description. I'm using TierMaker to make 3 separate videos to rank each of the primary army components in AOTP against each other. One video to compare all the Planeswalkers, one to compare all of the creatures, and one video to compare all of the spells. You may also find links to my TierMaker templates in the description below. Feel free to make a list for yourself and share with us on the Discord. I'm going to use the same general ranking metrics as I did for my colored tier list series. These entities will score higher in my tier list, mostly based on their contribution in a 1v1 AOTP game where the goal is to slay either the enemy planeswalker or their entire army, while playing on an AOTP map or relatively competitive Heroescape map. 2v2s and their performance in the official AOTP scenarios will also play a part in how I rank things, but those will have less weight in final judgment. Alright, here we are at TierMaker with all of the spells. There are quite a few spells. We're talking 135. So, we're gonna be snapping through. These are quick fires. If you want to hear more about my breakdowns for each of these spells, check out their respective color tier list videos, where I usually spend 2 to 3 minutes talking about a lot of their fun synergies and such. Same as all the other videos. We're starting with white. We're going next to blue, black, then red, and then green. I got it right this time. We're gonna get right into it. Blessing, the white enchantment. High, decent tier. I like this spell. It's a little expensive for my taste, especially for a hidden enchant. I think the primary thing holding the spell back is that it's a hidden enchant. A lot of enchantments, especially in white, that would add power. I want to be able to play the spell and benefit from it immediately. Blessing doesn't allow you to do that. If it was not a hidden enchant, but everything else was the same, I would probably put it in good tier, honestly. We have Gideon's Phalanx next. I think this is a pretty decent card for 10 points. It's pretty flexible in that you can literally place it on any planeswalker in the game. Unlike Red Stoke the Flames, Gideon's Phalanx, you can put it on any planeswalker, and you, as the white player, your white creatures get +1 toughness while they are within 4 spaces of that planeswalker. I really like it for that flexibility. It's unfortunate that it only hits white creatures, but it's still pretty decent and pretty usable for most white builds. Tenacity, probably high good tier. White does hero only builds really freaking well. Tenacity really helps with that. Generally, I suggest putting Tenacity on a hero creature and not using the planeswalker side of it, because it doesn't really benefit your planeswalker directly. It's very easy to place this on a hero creature, have that hero go in and fight, and also have potentially squads, like especially the hookers, come around and benefit from Tenacity when your hero is engaged with enemy figures. Very good spell when you have a hero that can really take advantage of it alongside of white's healing. Sunlance. I think this is going poor tier. Just too expensive. It's too expensive, and that you have to declare an attack and effectively at least make 1 attack roll against whatever figure you're trying to kill. It's not trash tier because at least it can salvage a terrible attack roll for you, but 30 points is far too much for that, for an insurance effectively. Swift Justice. 5 points, top tier, absolutely top tier. You can target any creature with it, very powerful in your heroes builds. You toss this on Core Captain, Eldrazi Ruiner, they have base 6 power, they're pretty much always going to heal some damage from this, and then you stack something like Tenacity or other white hero power buffs, and Swift Justice, I would say on an average, will heal 3 damage. Like, you can target your white hero and hit any figure, including an opposing planeswalker, and get tons of healing for your hero. Still very decent for squads. I mean, this card costs 5 points, so Even if you fail to heal with it, it's 5 points. You don't lose out on a lot of your deck if it does nothing. There are no words for how utterly broken I think Swift Justice really is. Up next is Survive the Night. I think I'll put this kind of mid-good tier. Whoops. There we go. I mean, +5 toughness until end of turn for a hero, since, again, I think a lot of the white builds are... you should always be looking at a hero build if you're using white or half-white. Survive the Night literally supports that. +5 toughness is pretty obscene, although you can end up with a Deathwalker roll, where even if your hero is rolling 8 or 9 toughness, 8 or 9 defense dice, that you get like 1 or 2 shields, which just really sucks on occasion. But this is why you have white healing spells. White's heroes are very threatening, and oftentimes other colors will look to burst that hero down to prevent them from doing much. Survive the Night is very good at preventing that. Next up, Stasis Snare. Just no with this card. You can only enchant, you pretty much only want to enchant an enemy squad with it. That it only works against squads is kind of a bummer. But on top of that, it's only when their squad kills one of your creatures, which means they are free to attack your Planeswalker first and then kill creatures after those attacks. This card would have been better, like the condition was after they attack your Planeswalker, they can't attack anymore this turn. This would actually be a decent card. But since it's only when they kill one of your creatures, and it's 20 points, this is just utter trash. I'm not a fan of a card that waits until you lose figures, and it barely even helps you. Don't use Stasis there, please. Spare from Evil. I'll probably put this high decent tier. This basically gives you a 2 HP, up to a 3 HP force field. This helps you block damage from spells. This helps a lot against black and red especially. It's pretty useful in helping your squads to be annoying, as long as you're not playing against blue, which can unsummon and then kill Spare from Evil relatively easily. Still a pretty good card. Solemn Offering, probably mid to low decent for this. 25 points to just destroy one face-up or face-down enchantment is pretty expensive for that utility, unfortunately. It is useful to help you fight blue and black. I don't typically try to include this card in my builds. It needed to be cheaper. If it was like 15 points, I think I would be more inclined to use it. It's just too expensive, and I think that's primarily what's holding it back. Next up is Skillful Lunge. I like Skillful Lunge enough to probably put it in low good tier. For 5 points, you can give one of your squads +2 power and +1 range while they're attacking something on the same elevation. The same elevation thing, that is really dumb. I don't understand why that has to be there. I feel like that should have just been left off the card, frankly, but at 5 points, this is pretty decent. Potentially in top tier if that same elevation clause wasn't there. But +2 power for a lot of squads is enough to make them extremely threatening to most other figures. Up next is Stonewill. I think this will go kind of low-ish good tier as well. I would say mostly for the synergy with Sorin. I don't really use Stonewill with Gideon or Nahiri very often, but Sorin is really cracked with this card. Because as if his Blade Master and Vampiric Thirst weren't enough, that you give him 2 more additional power when he's almost dead, and then this makes it easier for him to heal up. Stonewill is almost this high just because of the synergy with Sorin, and I think it's completely worth it. Next up is Silver Strike. I'll probably put this below Blessing, but above Solemn Offering. This is a pretty easy way to take a turn with your Planeswalker. You just summon your squad adjacent to a creature of your choice, like an enemy creature. Squad creature, don't forget. But then you can insta-kill it. Part of the reason why it's held back is that it doesn't do anything to heroes. Doesn't help white against heroes, but I guess that's okay when white usually fields the better hero builds. So Silver Strike's decent enough. Not Forgotten. I think I'll put this above Blessing. Probably right about here. I would say high decent. This is a really good squad protection card, despite it saying that you put it on your Planeswalker. You put this on your Planeswalker, you summon a squad, and then you walk your Planeswalker next to the squad that you just summoned, and your opponent is forced to either try and kill your Planeswalker, and in the case of like Nahiri on high ground, that's just a really tough fight sometimes. Or they can try and kill your squad, but by killing your newly summoned squad that's adjacent to your Planeswalker, they cause you to get a lot of power counters via Not Forgotten. Sorin can really snowball if opponents aren't smart about how they deal with him while he's surrounded by squads. It is really hard to trigger correctly sometimes, especially in the case of blue, who doesn't need to destroy your squad, they can just send them back to your reserve. So there are ways around this card, but it's generally going to be pretty good. Near-death experience. This has to go top tier. Healing your Planeswalker 2 damage, and any friendly Planeswalker on top of it, this is just really flexible for 2v2 scenarios, etc. There's no downside to that. Nothing else need to be said. You want this card in every white build, because you want your Planeswalker to live as long as possible. Hope against Hope. I think I like it right about here, in the middle of the good tier. I think my biggest knock against it is that it's a hidden enchant, kind of similar to Blessing, where it's like this is an effect you would like to have on your turn immediately to heal one of your heroes after they've been attacked. So you need to draw it early, if you draw this. Early enough where it's like your hero is still at full HP, yeah, place it face down on them. Because then when the first time your opponent attacks them, you can literally trigger this on your next turn at the start of the hero's turn. But if you draw this like mid to late game and your hero's damaged, this is painful to draw into when your heroes has like 3 or 4 damage on it, because then you have to put it face down on your hero and hope your hero doesn't die from the next round of attacks. And sometimes that bites you in the ass and fails to do anything, and then you've wasted points on Hope against Hope. I think the hidden enchant aspect of this kind of prevents it from being high good tiered or even into top tier. Seize the Initiative. This is going poor tier. First Strike is kind of a terrible mechanic in my opinion. That you have to roll more hits than the defender has toughness. That's hard to do and a gamble to play by itself, in that if you roll 4 hits against a creature that has 3 toughness and 3 life, like that's kind of an average squatty, your opponent was likely rolling 1 shield on that defense roll. So that you rolled 4 hits, you would have probably gotten 3 hits through to begin with, 3 damage through to begin with. I don't see how Seize the Initiative really... It's like a win more card, but so much so that you would have won without Seize the Initiative anyway. It's useful for your heroes only builds to help them just mow over one squad figure. I'm not a fan. Sanctified Charge. I think I'll make it worse than Stasis Snare. The big conflict with this card is that, so sure, you enchant your squad with it, but in order for your squad to heal, your white Planeswalker has to take a turn and deal damage on its turn. Honestly, it's like when you have a full squad on the field, or even like a lightly damaged squad on the field, I would still think you want to take a turn with the squad to get full activations out of them. And that in the end game, when you could, let's say, heal a partial down or a partial squad where there's like 1 or 2 squad figures left, it's not doing a lot to heal just one figure of 1 damage when your Planeswalker is probably the one who's getting most of the focus at that time anyway. Sanctified Charge is decent on Sorin because he can multi-attack, and Hiri can also use her Pass-Through Stone to deal damage, and then attack afterwards for an additional instance of dealing damage potentially. It's almost usable, but I'm still not a fan. Like, don't use this card. Marked by Honor is next. I think that'll go mid-low, decent. Not much to be said. It's kind of a cheap card. It only gives you +1 toughness. It's a hidden enchant, which is... The hidden enchant doesn't really affect it, and in some ways probably helps it more than not. But it's not a high impact card to give one squad +1 toughness. Can't complain. It does its job. Next up is Inspired Charge. There's almost no doubt in my mind this is top tier. +2 power for all creatures within 8 clear sight spaces of your walker is just powerful. There's nothing else to be said. This is great with squads. This is even pretty decent with heroes, especially for Sorin, when you can combine it with Corpse Lunge to give one of your heroes double attack. Then they're benefiting from Inspired Charge's +2 power 2 times. And or the Ghoul Vanguard, who can also move a zombie along with him, which means the Vanguard and the zombie both benefit from Inspired Charge. It's a pretty good card. Use this card. Ghostly Possession is next. I might put this one just above Sunlance. This is low decent to high poor, in my opinion. The primary thing propping it up is its synergy with Sorin. You play this on an opponent's squad figure, and Sorin can usually expect to kill that squad figure to heal 2 damage. That's probably the only reason why this isn't in trash tier. This affects one opponent figure, and it costs you one opponent squad figure, I should say. And it costs you 25 points. I don't see many reasons to use this outside of the synergy with Sorin to help him kill something to heal. I think the price is the primary reason this is held back. Way too expensive. Ooh, next up is Healing Salve. I really like this card. You heal 2 damage from any friendly creature, super flexible, and you get to draw a card. This is the only way white can draw a card. And healing 2 damage from any creature, be it your hero or your squad or even your teammates' creatures, just makes this universally ultra useful. There's no reason to not use this. There really isn't. You put this in every white deck. Honor of the Pure. I think this can go above Stonewill. This does require a white-only build. Doesn't mean Sorin and Nahiri can't use it. It's very hard to use non-white creatures in those builds is all. But this is pretty good considering all of the healing that white offers. This works for your heroes as well, which makes them really annoying to deal with. You can put this on an opponent's squad if you'd like to. This is similar to Gideon's Phalanx in that it doesn't say you have to put it on your squad. So you control the enchantment, put it on the enemy squad, and all of your white creatures benefit from it. It kind of sucks that your creatures have to be at full health to be able to benefit, but that's barely a downside considering we're dealing with white. Pretty decent card. The price is also a bit of a letdown, but considering it can affect your entire white army, this is powerful. Chaplain's Blessing. I really like this one too. I think this is above Swift Justice. I think the cost kind of keeps it from being better than Healing Salve. Had it costed 10 points instead of 20, I think this would be above Healing Salve. But even at 20 points, this is still a monstrous card for White's Heroes only builds. Healing 2 damage and getting a +1 power counter for your hero is just obscene. Very threatening. This is such a good card. Use it. You're using a White Heroes build, use it. Fell the Mighty. I could see this being in high decent. Very expensive, 45 points. The other big problem is that it only affects squads and only affects non-white squads on top of that. So there's some pros and cons to that. If your opponent is using white squads, this does nothing for you. And if you are Sorin or Nahiri, or Gideon, I suppose, and you're using non-white creatures like the Eldrazi Scions, this can kill your own squad creatures. So given those, I mean, it's powerful in the right situations. If you have no non-white creatures nearby and your opponent was silly enough to group all of their squad figures together, this is going to kill. This is going to get excellent value. Up next is Divine Favor. I like this one quite a bit. I think I like it more than Honor of the Pure, so I will put it right here. +1/+1 is pretty powerful. I would say the primary reason it's up here is because the access to instant +1 power for a whole squad can be really good if you have a whole squad of at least 3 figures remaining. There's really not much else to be said though. Just a generic buff card, but I really like it. Next up is Battle-Wise Valor. I would say high decent. It's basically Survive the Night, but for squads. However, squads are very easily gimped by a lot of black, blue, and white effects such as Fell the Mighty, Silver Strike, that kind of thing. That it's kind of easy to play around squad enchantments, especially a squad hidden enchant. Blue can unsummon, it goes away. Black can just insta-kill them. There's too many ways around it that, for me to place it higher than this. Ooh, Angel's Mercy is next. I think I like it more than Gideon's Phalanx, but not quite as much as Survive the Night. At the start of a turn of a hero, you can remove 3 damage from any friendly creature, so it's very flexible in that you can help your teammate if you wish. Kind of a bummer that you have to take a turn with a hero creature in order to play it, and that might prevent it from being higher in my tier list. You can literally take a turn with your damaged hero, play it, and heal that same damaged hero that's taking a turn, and that's often how I use this card, to be frank. It's very good just for that alone. Alright, moving on to blue. Ghostly Wings. I think I'll put this right here, primarily for blue heroes builds. Giving +2 move and flying to Eldrazi Ruiner, Necro Alchemist, super busted. Just for those 2 synergies alone. Eldrazi Ruiner really loves this card. It's still pretty decent for some of your squads as well, but it's this high for the synergy with heroes, for how good it is with heroes. Jace's Scrutiny is next. I like it more than these other two white spells, so it'll go here. Trash tier though. Way too expensive. The scenarios where it can be good is just so like astronomical to pull off that this is a dead card more often than not. Don't use this card. Royal Mage's Trick. I think that can go here. The cost, 35 points, is just a little too much for the effect. Basically, if they don't have 3, 4, or more cards in their hand, this card is kind of dead. If you paid 35 points, you're really looking to get that +3 or +4 power when they have 3 or 4 cards in their hand, and you have something like the Ruiner or the Necro Alchemist coming in. This is nasty. This is a very good hero support card. Also usable on your squads, all the same though. Pretty decent with the Illusionary Projections to give one of them a huge buff in power. So pretty good card. There's just enough negative that it's kept out of top tier. Oh, Selective Memory. I think this could go here. I think I like Healing Salve just a bit more. It's top tier simply because it's 5 points and it lets you pick any sorcery out of your deck. Blue has a lot of excellent sorceries, and in the case of Kiora, green has a lot of excellent sorceries too. You get Titanic Growth and Overrun are enough alone to be like, if I'm using Kiora, Selective Memory is going in my deck for fishing those two cards out. Still great to fish Welcome to the Fold out, Misdirection. There are plenty of blue sorceries that are totally worth putting this in so that you can grab any single one of them at any time you want. Scatter to the Winds. I would say right about here. A little too expensive. Kick an enchantment out of play and back on top of an opponent's deck doesn't seem that good to me. There are some use cases for it. If you want to use like Jace's Erasure on some enchantment that's currently on the field, you can kick it to the opponent's deck, Jace's Erasure it out so that it's destroyed. It also works well against Black's Dark Harvest because Black just sacrificed a creature, and now if they want to bring it back into play, they have to do it again. But other than that, I would rather buy Misdirection for 5 points more. Scatter Arc. I think I like Scatter Arc enough to put it high decent. This feels about right. Countering an enchantment usually feels pretty good. I think part of the problem with Scatter Arc being in blue is that blue has a lot of ways to mess with enchantments, mostly with all of their unsummoned spells, which will inevitably destroy enchantments. And then they also have Misdirection, which allows them to steal an enchantment for themselves. So Scatter Arc really is pretty decent. It's just, I think blue has a lot of other tools that deals with enchantments. It's a very decent card. Infinite Reflection. It's hard for me to place this. I think I might like CZ Initiative more than Infinite Reflection. I really don't see many reasons to use Infinite Reflection. In my mind, it's only really useful when your opponent is fielding Merfolk Royal Mage, Eldrazi Ruiner, Core Aeronaut Captain. Outside of those 3 creatures existing in the opponent's side, I don't think this really benefits you, especially when it's only one single creature on your side that gets the buff. I just don't think this is a very good card. Trail of Evidence. It has uses. I'm going to put high poor tier. It has uses. It's just that it's very specific in requiring you to be basically next to a Cryptolith or next to a Glyph. I would say it's more useful for when you can be next to a Glyph, and like there's that scenario where you have to put all of your figures next to a Glyph by the end of the 30-something rounds to score points. This is pretty useful for that scenario. As long as you know ahead of time that you're going to have a few Glyphs on your map, this can be a pretty decent blue card. There are a lot of other blue spells I'd rather have in my deck than Trail of Evidence, especially at the cost that it is, so low tier for sure. Pieces of the Puzzle. I like this enough to put it above Scatter Arc. 5 points, pretty decent. Basically just gives you the Lanterngeist Eerie Observation. It's just a spell version of it. You look at the top card of your opponent's deck, you know what they're going to draw, or you can prevent them from drawing it by putting it towards the end of the game. Has some synergy with Jace's Erasure. Pretty decent for 5 points. There's really not much you can complain about here. Next up is Psychic Rebuttal. I like it about here. I'm a pretty big fan of Psychic Rebuttal. I think the primary downside of why it isn't top tier is that you can't choose when to activate it. If you were able to choose when you flip it to counter, this would absolutely be top tier. There are a lot of powerful sorceries in AOTP. But on the flip, there are a lot of very weak sorceries in AOTP. And because of the rule that says that you have to flip it when a sorcery is played, or you basically lose the effect that is in the rulebook, it's pretty easy for your opponent to scout for this. Just play like some cheap 5 or 10 point sorcery, and then they can play some big sorcery after that, knowing Psychic Rebuttal has either triggered or is not on your Planeswalker. Talents of the Telepath. I'm not sure if I would use this over Trail of Evidence, so we'll put it here. Too expensive, and if you've watched my recent Planeswalker tier video, or even my color tier list blue video, it shares problems with Jace Investigator's Search for Answers, in that there are a lot of sorceries you'd like to play with it. The problem is a lot of the really good sorceries often mention the color of the Planeswalker that you're supposed to be using, or the color of the creature that you want to affect. Like red Seize the Day, green's Bountiful Harvest. Like, these require that you have a specific color of figure, and if you're using mono blue, you don't have red or green figures. Too expensive for the rather limited use that it has. Next up is Project Self. I would say this is high good tier, potentially low top tier. 5 points to teleport your Planeswalker. If you get this in your opening hand, this is a really good card. You can instantly summon something. Like, as a blue Planeswalker, I really like this with the Lantern Geist. You summon the Lantern Geist, you pop Project Self, teleport next to them, you can summon more creatures, and then also move your Planeswalker after that. For 5 points, that's a lot you can do. You can even play this after attacking to teleport your Planeswalker to safety. There's a lot of utility in this card, and to move your very key Planeswalker figure with it. I would say the primary thing holding it from top tier is that it doesn't prevent LEAs. If it had that phrase on there, I think this is an easy top tier card. Oh, our list is getting big, I have to scroll. Next up is Welcome to the Fold. Probably, I might put it above Inspired Charge. This is effectively, you can either use 2 of your opponent's squads against them, like their squad creatures against them. You can activate 2 of your ally squads, or you can activate 2 of your own squads. I would say it's only knocked down a little bit because it costs 40, and that is pretty expensive, but there's really not much to hate about this card. This is a good card. You can activate your Planeswalker and then get 2 additional creature activations. Very powerful. Pour over the pages. I might put this one maybe below. This is somewhere high decent to low good, so I think I like Pieces of the Puzzle a little bit more. Pour Over the Pages is pretty good for buffing your Planeswalker. This is key for additional toughness. The primary drawback to this is that you need to have 3 cards. 3 cards in your hand. Given the small deck size of 12 in AOTP, you have to basically withhold 25% of your deck if you want to use this card. That's pretty tough. I think that's the primary reason why it's decent instead of top tier. +1 toughness for your Planeswalker is definitely good. It's got that massive condition. Mind Tricks. I like it more than Pour Over the Pages. Don't love it. That's why it's going to go high decent. For 5 points, can't really complain. Again, it is really awesome in that it can entrap single space figures like Planeswalkers. I really like this when you can catch like an Arlinn or a Nissa off guard at range, and then they switch with your figures and they end up trapped amongst all of your blue figures. Really good to catch somebody off guard. It's just that it can be played around as long as players are competent and paying attention. Ooh, Misdirection is next. I think I like this more than Psychic Rebuttal, so we'll go here. It's nice to be able to steal a lot of like white and red's really powerful enchantments. This messes with a lot of black enchantments, red enchantments, white enchantments. I really like to kick like Despise off of my Planeswalker. Jace, especially Super Jace, that is. Good Jace really hates Despise, and this helps protect you from Despise. There's a lot of good uses for Misdirection. This is a good card. Jace's Erasure. Yeah, I like it here. Killing 2 cards when blue has Lantern Geists for Eerie Observation, and you also have Pieces of the Puzzle, as mentioned earlier. There's a lot of synergy here to help you look at the card, and like you could put that back on top of their deck and you'll know that you're killing a good card. But even if you play it blindly, still pretty good spell that you're killing 2 of their cards for only 5 points. It's almost nothing but pure win every time you play it. Way too good for 5 points. Mind Control here. I'll put low. I like low good tier. It can't affect heroes, so that's kind of a bummer. And you can't use it on your own squad, like Welcome to the Fold, which hampers mind control for sure. First of all, it doesn't say that you gain control of the squad or anything, so it's still susceptible to LEAs from your own figures. But on top of that, if you're going against like red or white and they super buff one of their squads, use that squad against them and go pummel their Planeswalker with it. This is a decent card when it can be used, for sure. Gone Missing. I think low good tier. I think I'm warming up to this card. The primary things that keep it from top tier, kind of high price, it's 40, that's pretty high. And then also that you have to shuffle the spell from your graveyard back into your library, which means you have to draw back into it, can be a bummer. But getting a double play of something like Welcome to the Fold, Unsummon, potentially even like Jace's Erasure or Ghostly Wings, there's a lot of blue spells that like you get a second play of them, that's really good. Sometimes they're not quite worth 40 points to have, to get that opportunity to replay them, but this is good enough. Next up is Essence Flux. I like top tier for this one. I think low top tier is appropriate, mostly due to this card's cost. 25 points. If this was just like 15 or 20 points, I could easily bump this up to mid top tier. Considering you could literally summon a fat hero like Eldrazi Ruiner on the first turn and walk your Planeswalker forward, and on a later turn, before even choosing an army card, you could then teleport that hero from 100 spaces away and into within 6 clear sight spaces of your Planeswalker. Makes this card, just the ambush aspect of this card is really good and worth it by itself, in that you can teleport the Ruiner all the way across the map next to your Planeswalker, 6 spaces out, and then walk him. Like, you then activate him and walk him further to potentially punch your opponent's lights out. The mobility and flexibility provided by this card is obscene. Don't sleep on it. Unsummon. No, I'm gonna go low top tier. Kind of painful that it can't affect heroes. However, useful in that you can affect any squad, so you can use this on your own squad to heal your squad, or maybe you want to unsummon in a friendly, like a teammate squad. Works very well if you have a teammate like Gideon, or somebody using the Evasian Inquisitors, in that you can unsummon the Inquisitors, have your friendly resummon them to put an additional power counter down. There's a lot of cool, unique synergies here, especially in team games. Still useful in a 1v1 because you can unsummon your own figures. Very useful if you can unsummon an opponent's figure, especially after you've killed their Planeswalker. After an opponent's Planeswalker is dead, unsummon becomes destroy an opponent's squad. Very powerful, especially in the end game if you can kill their Planeswalker. Still useful even if their Planeswalker is alive to destroy enchantments. This card is way too good at 10 points. Twisted Image. I think I'll put it here. This card only works, in my opinion, with the Leyline Phantoms from blue. But it's that good because they have 5 toughness and you just flip them into 5 power for 1 turn. It effectively gives you something like White's Inspired Charge. Only Twisted Image affects 1 squad, and primarily 1 specific squad, if I'm going to be honest. But the Leyline Phantoms are pretty good, and that basically if you're using them, you're using this. Like, you don't separate Twisted Image from the Leyline Phantoms, and for that, like, if 2 or 3 of the Phantoms are alive and you can play this card, you're probably going to put in a lot of work with it. Ghost Form. I think I like Pieces of the Puzzle a bit more than this. This works against enemy creatures, which includes hero creatures, and is kind of nice to fight through bulky squad figures like buffed white figures, or something like the Kessig Ravagers who have 4 toughness as a base. Also helps to fight off hero creatures. It negates the Eldrazi Ruiner's toughness buffs. Pretty decent if you want to deal with creatures, but it doesn't do anything against Planeswalkers, so yeah. Aether Spouts. This is gonna go top tier. So it's unsummoned but turned into a hidden enchant. So it makes your opponent effectively have to waste one of their attack phases with one of their squads. Protects your Planeswalker, which I think is very useful. It's not up there with Healing Salve and Selective Memory because it doesn't do anything against heroes. So if you have this in your deck and you're going against a heroes only build, Aether Spouts is an unfortunately wasted 15 points. But if there's even 1 squad in the enemy army, very good card for basically all the same reasons that Unsummon is. Next up, Curiosity. Not a fan. Low port tier. Doesn't enhance your squad's combat ability at all. And when blue has a pretty decent amount of ways to like filter and draw their deck as it is, I don't really care for Curiosity. Spell Flicker is just kind of dumb. I don't really see a lot of point of it. Curiosity is a confusing card, and frankly, if it disappeared from AOTP, it would barely affect anything. Call to Heal. I think I like it right about here. It's a pretty decent card. High decent because in the case of squad-on-squad combat, which is what is required for this to work, it basically does what Aether Spouts does, but protecting your squad instead. It's easy enough for your opponent to avoid or ignore your squads in some cases, though, such that Call to Heal might not trigger if they just bum rush your Planeswalker. Still a pretty good card, just not my favorite. Up next is Anticipate. Oh boy. I guess I'll go here with Anticipate. I just don't like the idea of letting everybody, including your opponents, draw 2 cards. I typically like to play a more control style with blue, so when my opponent can draw a ton of cards without me knowing what they are via Eerie Observation, pieces of the puzzle, I don't like all of the unknowns that you force upon yourself, and it only gets worse as there are more players in the game. Not a big fan. All right, we're into black. Altar's Reap. This is going top tier. Let me I think I'll go here with it. Healing 4 damage from black's Planeswalkers is really powerful. The fact that we have to pay 25 points for the spell and sacrifice a creature is kind of annoying. Restless Zombies and Scourge Cultists are very easy to kill, and you can benefit from this card. Restless Zombies come back effectively for free, let's face it. Very easy to use this card. Ooh, Despise. I like Despise a lot. I think I can go high good tier. Potentially low top tier, but high good tier I'm going to stick to. There are enough ways to destroy enchantments, and you got blue's Misdirection, which turns this against you if you're black too, that you have to be wary of. In any competitive AOTP game, you're fighting against an enemy Planeswalker. You drop their power by 1, boom, you're ahead. 10-point spell for that, pretty good. Ever After. I think here is about good. It's a decent card, only works against squads, and that you have to kill an enemy squad first, so that kind of knocks it down a little bit. Like, you're going against heroes only, worthless card. I don't really have much else to say. Like, the card is face value. You get to summon one of their squads, move and attack with it, and then it dies at the end of the turn. You do got to be careful with traffic jams, but altogether decent. Corrupts. I'm a big fan of Corrupts. Yeah, I would say it's going to be pretty, probably below Project Self. This is just a generic I win card. Like, you deal damage to the creature and then you heal 1 from your Planeswalker. For 10 points, this is just good. I don't need to explain. Duress. I think Duress can go top tier. I think low top tier is appropriate here. +1 power, and then when your enchanted squad damages the Planeswalker, they have to discard. That is pretty powerful. Honestly, the only thing holding this card back is that it's attached to black. If only there was a multicolored blue or green Planeswalker, or if this was a different color, this would be extreme top tier. Like, if you could get a range figure like the projections, like blue's projections, to use this card, this would be obscenely powerful. To be able to force your opponent to hide their Planeswalker or risk losing cards from their hand because your squad has +1 power and is going to cause them to discard when that squad damages them. Such a good card. Demonic Appetite. Yeah, this feels about right. So like a lot of other black things, this only works against squads. You really look to enchant an opponent's squad with it. Nicely for black though is that they have a lot of throwaway squad figures, like your Restless Zombies, your Scourge Cultists, that are going to be killed in combat by the opponents pretty often. So this could trigger reasonably enough with your opponent. It's just that it might cause them to avoid your squad altogether, take LEAs, and go and attack your Planeswalker. I don't love it. It's a little too expensive for what it does, in my opinion, but I would say it approaches usable in the right situation, as long as there aren't heroes only builds on the other side. Dark Harvest is going straight top tier. I like it right about here. The fact that this combines with Rise of the Dark Realms, which is also black, and it gives you your squad +3 power, and it's an enchantment, which means it'll last past the first turn you play it. Yeah, if you could play Corpse Lunge and or Rise of the Dark Realms on the same turn that you play Dark Harvest, and you can get those attacks on the opposing Planeswalker, you're going to win the game. Very good, you just got to play it at the right time. The sacrifice is tough to deal with, and I think that's why it's not higher than it is. Still super powerful. Crippling Blight. I would say the cost of this card, and that you generally only want to play it on an opposing squad, and therefore if you're going against heroes only, it's basically a dead card. Kind of keep it down. It's pretty decent to knock things like the Illusionary Projections or the Kessigs. Like, those are two squads that really don't want to lose their power stats. Black can insta-kill squads in so many ways that you really don't need to debuff those squads when you can just murder them outright anyway. Crippling Blade is okay. Virulent Swipe. Alright, it's gonna go low poor tier. It's just too expensive. 40 points, and you have to deal 1 damage to all of the creatures in one of your squads. So number one, this automatically excludes the Restless Zombies from being able to be used with this card. It also kind of hurts to damage your expensive Reavers, but I think the Reavers and the Malakir Bloodchasers are probably the top 2 like use cases for this card. Insta-killing enemy squad figures is really good, but again the problem comes in useless against heroes. There's way too much cost and also uselessness associated with this card for me to rank it much higher than crap. Next up is Creeping Dread. Creeping Dread feels really similar to Crippling Blight. It hampers an opponent's squad, but it's like, if an opponent is dealing 1 damage to their squad, they usually don't mind splitting that damage up amongst their squad creatures, like especially with like Illusionary Projections. If the projections are still at full power and they come and attack you, it's like dealing 1 damage to them in response from Creeping Dread absolutely can be decent enough in the right circumstances, but I think there are better cards. Ooh, next up is Mental Agony. I think I can go here. 5 points, pretty good. The nice thing is that it triggers upon any figure attacking, so it helps to protect your squad in that if your opponent attacks them with anything, that opponent is discarding a card. But part of the problem is kind of shared with what I said with like Demonic Appetite, is that your opponent might just avoid your squad altogether and just go and attack your Planeswalker, and then Mental Agony isn't helping at all. I think for 5 points, it's kind of hard to go wrong with this card. Rise of the Dark Realms. This is pretty good. Good synergy with Dark Harvest is absolute number 1 to be mentioned here. Very good synergy with like the Malakir Bloodchasers, the Blighted Reavers, like resurrecting those expensive squads, especially at the start of their turn. Like you resurrect them and then like you basically have a surprise squaddy coming back and then moving and attacking. Can feel really good. It's a little bit less useful with the cheaper black squads or like the Scions. Like resurrecting a squaddy is always a good thing, but resurrecting a weak squaddy that might not do a whole lot doesn't feel quite as good. And I think that this card's price is also, the spell cost is a little bit hampering, but not that much. So still a very good card. You should probably include it in most of your black decks, honestly. Killing Wave. I am pretty much going to put this right next to Fell the Mighty as soon as I find where I put Fell the Mighty. Yeah, it's decent. I would say Killing Wave is slightly better than Fell the Mighty. A little bit cheaper and synergizes better with, especially with Liliana. Like a Liliana zombie tribal really loves this card. But it's effectively Fell the Mighty, but black. It deals 3 damage, which means it won't outright kill Blue's Lantern Geist, which is significant because those are really good squads. But every other squad creature it's going to absolutely murder. But again, useless against heroes and useless against other zombies if your opponent is fielding black. So still pretty good though. Given its cost, it's pretty good when it works. Lily's Caress. This is going top tier, probably below Duress. For 5 points, it's literally just play the card and your opponent loses a card. You can't kill anything less than a 5-point card out of the opponent's hand. If you kill anything more expensive, like any of these top tier cards with it, you've come out on top. I'm not gonna expand on that. Just use this card. If you need to put a 5-point card in and you're black, use this. Strangling Soot. I'll put it in mid-decent. For all the reasons as every other freaking black spell, this is only for opposing squads. It has to be a non-black squad creature attacking your enchanted squad. So again, opponents can play around it. They might ignore your enchanted squad. They might use a hero to attack. They might use a planeswalker to attack. They might kill your squad with spells. They might have black squads themselves. This is good when it works. Like if your opponent's using non-black squad to attack, this is fantastic. You cancel out their attack and kill their creature. So it's fantastic for that, but there are a lot of ways to play around it that make me uncomfortable with putting it anything above decent. Painful truths. I think right about here feels right. I think the synergy with the Restless Zombies alone put it up here, honestly. To just kill your zombie to draw 2 cards feels really good. If you're not using Restless Zombies, this kind of suffers. It's a little expensive, and if you draw it too late into the game, like if it's like your last like 1 or 2 cards, it's effectively useless. And it's kind of hard to put 2 damage on anything other than Skurzag Cultists or Restless Zombies, in my opinion. So for those downsides, I think low good tier. Corpse Lunge. I think I'll put that right here. Having to deal 2 damage to your Planeswalker is quite a cost for this card, in my opinion. You need to keep your Planeswalker protected and or hope they're not damaged by the time you have this card. But you can use this with a hero, and you use this with like Sorin and Core Aeronaut Captain, and or any black Planeswalker with like the Ruiner, or if you combine it with Dark Harvest, and you double attack with a squaddy that has Dark Harvest for +3 additional power. This is a deadly card if you can play it safely. And I think the 2 damage to your Planeswalker aspect prevents it from being top tier, but it's still a really good card in the right situations. Barter in Blood. I think this can go top tier as well. 5-point card. You can put it on your squad or your hero. So it might cause your opponent to avoid dealing with whatever creature is enchanted with this, but when you can enchant a really annoying, like put the Ruiner or put it on the Ruiner, put it on the Core Aeronaut Captain, your opponent kind of has to deal with it because those guys have huge attack values and they can't be ignored. But on top of it, yeah, for 5 points, you could cause your opponent to discard if they kill the enchanted creature in combat. It can be avoided if they use spells, abilities, or if your creature dies by an LEA, leave an engagement attack. But for 5 points, this is still really good for what it's doing. Harrowing Journey. I'm going to go low decent with this. I have warmed up to this card a little bit, but not a lot. It's really expensive. Typically, you want to play this on your own creature. That unfortunately doesn't quite feel like it's worth +3 move per turn. But it has its uses, again, with like the Eldrazi Ruiner. He really loves the extra mobility and can get away with taking 1 damage per turn. And white heroes, if you're Sorin and you can use this card, your white heroes can get away with taking damage when you can heal them with white spells. But there are only so many use cases for this card, and it's too expensive for what it does. So Behold the Beyond is in a similar boat. I'd put it right here, low poor. It has uses for when it's your only card, or maybe you have it and 1 other card in your hand so that you can skip through your deck and get to other powerful cards more quickly. It often requires you to discard cards, and I don't like discarding cards. You don't want to discard good cards. You really don't. Very niche. I'm not a fan. Bone Splinters. This is going... I might even put it above Altar's Reap at this point. I think it is. So in my color tier list, I actually said Altar's Reap was Black's best card, but I've warmed up a lot to Bone Splinters such that, given Bone Splinters cost 10 points, and how much damage it does, it is key in Black's ability to deal with heroes. Just kill one of your Restless Zombies or Skurzag Cultists, and you can almost guarantee you're going to kill a white hero or some other hero, or I guess some other squad figure even if there are no heroes. It's just very widely useful. This card is effectively kill a creature of your choice, but also you trade your creature with it. But Black has their crappy squads that they don't care about, so it's almost not a downside at all. Excellent card. Such a good card. Use this card. We are into red spells now. First up is Burn at the Stake. Put Burn at the Stake at high decent. I like this card. It only works against creatures, so that's probably one of the bigger reasons why I wouldn't put it anything higher. It doesn't help you kill the opposing Planeswalker, but it does buff all of your figures against your chosen creature type, so it can help your haste figures, it can help your Planeswalker to kill, like especially Chandra likes this card. Every figure in red loves power boost, so there's very little downside outside of the inability to help you kill a Planeswalker. Burn from Within. I'd say Burn from Within can go about right here, low decent. Just like a lot of the black spells, this only works when your opponent has a squad. It can be deleted in a few ways as well. And if you draw into it way too late, like if it's your last couple of cards, most squads will probably have died by that time, so then it gets less damage output because there might only be 1 or 2 squad figures left. But Burn from Within can insta-kill a few of like the restless zombies. It can instantly wipe all of them out if they try and move. Flamewing Phoenixes, it can instantly kill all of them. The squad only aspect, and just there's a myriad of other things that are kind of problematic with this card that I don't really care much for it. Chandra's Fury is up. I think this can go low top tier is good. +1 power for your Planeswalker while not engaged is good for all of the red Planeswalkers. They all have a range of 4 or more. You can buff your Planeswalker, they can have a good end game, they can have a good early game, but late game for sure you'll have drawn this card and had the chance to play it. So being able to kill things faster is always good. Chandra's Outrage. I think I put that right here. 5 points. You deal 1 damage to a creature that's adjacent to any figure you control, and for 5 points, that's really not bad. It's going to be very hard to not have a chance to play this card in any given game. And speaking of that next card, it's Circle of Flame. I think I'll put this below Chandra's Fury, but definitely top tier, low top tier in my opinion. This is above Chandra's Outrage because it can hit a figure. That is the important thing, is that you can use this to tap your opponent's Planeswalker, which in my eyes is just really good. Red relies on a lot of range 1 figures anyhow, so it's pretty easy to get one of your damaged red figures adjacent to a Planeswalker that you want to damage with this card. And even if you don't get the opportunity to play this and to damage your opponent's Planeswalker, you can still damage a creature with it, and for 5 points, you can't ask for much more. Dissension in the Ranks. I think right here is pretty decent. It's an okay card. This card feels like it's mostly on point as far as like what it does and the point cost. So it's less useful against range 1 creatures, but when you can get this and hit a range figure with it, it can pretty easily get its value. Dual casting. Alright, I'm going to go high decent with this one. Pretty much 2 major caveats here. So it's really expensive. I believe it's 45. That it doesn't need to cost that much. But the second one being that you can only play this and basically 1 other card each turn, because like if you play Seize the Day and then play Dual Casting, to play Seize the Day again, you've played your 3 spells for the turn. So it costs too many points, and it restricts your spell usage to basically 1 other card that you played per turn. But the ability to play Seize the Day, Twin Flame, even like Incinerate twice, I think helps keep this card where it is. Mono Red really likes this card. Dual colors can't really fit it in because it only works with red sorceries. Dual shots. Our tier list is getting big. I think dual shot can be low good tier. I think the primary thing that bothers me about it is that stupid 7 to 9 spaces away. Oh my gosh, that can be annoying. That's probably the biggest reason why it's in low good tier instead of a little bit higher. Because that's really, I feel like that's a pretty stringent restriction. My goodness. But otherwise, pretty good card. Dealing 2 true damage is very useful in a lot of scenarios. Fire Breathing is next. Straight to high tier, or to top tier with it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I find it to be better than most of these other ones. Great card. +2 power for a whole squad as an enchantment is excellent. If you have all 3 of like your Fire Cats or even sometimes your Phoenixes alive and you can get them adjacent to the Planeswalker with this on them, you're going to inflict some serious pain. Combine this with any other red spell. Seize the Day, Twin Flame. Fire Breathing is just so good on so many squads. My goodness. Flames of the Firebrand. I think I'll put it right here. Decent. I find this to be a very mediocre card and sometimes hard to use optimally. I mean, just even getting 1 point of chip damage on a creature within 2 spaces of your Planeswalker isn't that bad, but there are better cards. There really are just better red cards, and it's kind of hard to use this where you can tap 2 creatures with it. Just very average. There's not much to it. Goblin Warpaint. I think I'll put this top of decent. I haven't really used this card very much, admittedly. Still haven't. But given its point cost, moving a whole squad 4 spaces as long as you've killed something is pretty decent. It allows you to kill something that's on a glyph and then use Goblin Warpaint after your action 4 attacks to then move your squad onto the glyph, or to take other, like if you just took high ground, like if you killed something on high ground, you can then move your squad to take over that high ground. I think for that utility alone, this is pretty decent. I could see this being potentially even higher if I'll have to warm up to it. Oh my gosh, Harness the Storm. Alright, 20 points. You have to kill something in combat first, and then discard 2 cards. It's just, that is atrocious all to start. Like, you think this card would be like ultimate powerful, but no, not at all. Instead, what you do is you deal 1 damage to all creatures, yours, your teammates, and your opponent's creatures. All creatures within 3 spaces of your Planeswalker after you jump through all those freaking hoops. No, just no. Don't use this card. This card is so bad, it's unreal. Moving on to Incinerate, let's just get away from Harness the Storm. Mid to high good tier. Your Planeswalker is probably going to end up adjacent to 1 enemy creature at least once in your game. I think it's almost inevitable, given this is AOTP, come on. Dealing 3 true damage to an adjacent creature feels really good. This can pound a hero. This works well with dual casting to basically insta-kill almost every hero. And if it doesn't insta-kill them, it puts them within an extreme danger zone. So, very good card. I really like Incinerate. It's almost an auto-include for my red decks, honestly. Next up is Twin Flame. Everybody, hear the angels. Ah! This is probably the best spell in the game. You attach something like Fire Breathing, Power of Fire, like any number of power buffs with Twin Flame, and you're doubling any of those hits that you roll, everything's just dying. I've seen too many games where somebody plays Twin Flame and attacks an opposing Planeswalker, and the Planeswalker dies. Pretty much whenever Twin Flame is played, a Planeswalker is dying. That is basically what this card is. Infernal Plunge. You sacrifice one of your creatures to deal damage to an opposing creature. So here's the thing. Red's creatures don't have a lot of life. The only ones that have 3 life are the Javelineers. They're expensive though, so it's like you're paying 20 points for the spell, and you're also paying 33 points from the Javelineer you're killing to deal 3 damage, assuming the Javelineer is at full health, to deal 3 damage to a figure within 6 spaces. It's like, why would you pay for this when you could just go use Dual Shot or Incinerate and not kill your own squad in the process? There's not many reasons to use this card, honestly. Don't use Infernal Plunge. Malevolent Whispers. I would say this is high decent. I like this enough. I would say I put it above dual casting. Pretty similar to Blue's Mind Control, but you have to be within 2 spaces of whoever you're targeting. But it also lets you give them +1 power until the end of turn. It's not too far from Blue's Mind Control, and I think that makes sense. I don't like it quite as much because it's a little more expensive, and you have to be within 2 spaces, which means your Planeswalker has to really get close to an opponent. All the same, if a creature is approaching you, it makes it really easy to use Malevolent Whispers, honestly. It's basically red mind control. There's really not much else to say. Nahiri's Machinations. I don't love this card. I do think it's better than Flames of the Firebrand, so it's just going to go here, because I don't like it more than like any of these white. Given that we have Chandra's Fury, which gives you +1 power while not engaged, and this gives you +1 power while engaged, you would think Chandra's Fury would have the requirement of kill something in combat before you play this card. But no, for some reason, the one that requires you to put your Planeswalker adjacent to an enemy figure has that. I don't like putting my Planeswalkers intentionally into adjacent combat. Those are 2 big reasons why it's usable, but I don't love it. Oh, Power of Fire. It's definitely right around Duress. I think simply because Duress is cheaper and has an additional effect, I'm going to put Power of Fire lower. But make note that Power of Fire has access to better figures that Duress doesn't. So Duress can't be played on Elf Rangers or Kessig Rangers, at least in a 1v1. Power of Fire can be used with Arlinn, and when it's used with Kessigs and Elf Rangers, it's really good. Just rolling more attack dice makes this a very good card. There's nothing else to be said. Pyroclasm, also a very good card. I like this one quite a bit. I think I'll put it here. Dealing 1 damage to your own red creature is kind of a bummer, and I think that's why this isn't higher, but this is still top tier because it's basically an AoE bomb that in some cases won't even kill your figure. The Phoenixes and the Firecats are both mobile, so it's pretty easy to use this with them and to deal a lot of damage.
Firecats having 2 life and being double spaced really helps them get in position and nuke a lot of things with this card. You can hit Planeswalkers with it, you can hit a ton of nearby creatures. There is friendly fire, that's definitely possible here, but I think it's generally avoidable, so very good card. Rolling Trembler. Oh no. I can't make up my mind. I think I'll put it here. Deal 2 damage to your Planeswalker to deal 1 damage to their Planeswalker. In a 1v1, that's garbage. In a 2v2 or in other scenarios, maybe. You're going to draw a lot of aggro and get yourself killed in a lot of situations, I think, though. To like run in within a few spaces of 2 opponent's Planeswalkers just to use the spell you're just asking to get killed really quickly. But the sheer fact that you have to deal 2 damage to yourself to deal 1 damage to other Planeswalkers is just bad. Ugh. Rush of Adrenaline. This one's kind of hard to rank. This is uniquely stronger mostly because it has a lot of synergy with the Eldrazi Ruiner in that you can play this before activating him so that you can use his Lash of Tentacles. You can reposition him via Rush of Adrenaline to then use his Lash of Tentacles when you activate him. But outside of that specific synergy, dealing 1 damage to your creature to move it 4 spaces usually isn't quite worth it. Keep in mind the same things with Goblin Warpaint, that you could play this like after killing something in combat to then overtake a glyph or to take high ground, at least with 1 creature. So there are some uses, and I think it has some utility. And getting out of Action 3 movement, there's enough utility in it that I like this card enough. And it's 5 points, so it's not that bad. Seize the Day. Let's rocket this sucker to the moon. This is going above Fire Breathing, but below Twin Flame, absolutely. Move and attack with a squad creature, again. This is red we're talking about. You combine this with Twin Flame, Fire Breathing, things are dying. You attack a Planeswalker with it, things are dying. You double attack a Planeswalker by activating your squad and then also playing Seize the Day later, Planeswalkers are dying. Do you just want to use it to like summon your creatures and then use it to take a glyph? Go ahead. Very flexible card. If you have any red squad creatures in your deck, you better be using this card. Senseless Rage. I'll go right here. High good tier. This is good. This card is basically, you can play it on a squad or a hero, and you can either give the enchanted creatures advantage/disadvantage, if you're familiar with the term from D&D. When that squad attacks, after the defender rolls, you may then choose to re-roll that attacker's dice, whether you want to roll more or less. So like, if you have an attacker that's attacking your figures, put Senseless Rage on them, right? If that attacker comes and attacks your Planeswalker, and they roll 5 hits and you roll 2 shields, you might say, okay, I'm going to re-roll those attack dice, because I think I'll roll less than 5 hits. And you might roll 2 or 3 hits and save yourself a bunch of damage. And on the flip side, you might want to give advantage, quote unquote, to like either a friendly or like your own heroes. Very good on the Eldrazi Ruiner, using Nahiri. Give your core Aeronaut Captain, good card. Stancia Masquerade. I think I'll put it here. It only works for 1 creature, and you have to deal 1 damage to your creature at the end of the turn. This is just silly. To convert blanks into 1 hit, I don't understand this. This card feels like it's almost hurting you as much as it's helping you. If not helping you at all, if you're only rolling 3 or 4 attack dice, you might not even get a blank. And then you just deal 1 damage to yourself and wasted 10 points of your spell deck for nothing. And like, even on a good day, you roll 1 blank. It's like, okay, you traded 1 hit to them, and in a good case, it's their Planeswalker. But even if you hit their creature for 1 additional damage from rolling 1 blank, and then you still take 1 damage in return, it's just not... I'm not a fan. Stoke the Flames! I think that can go right here. This gives your Planeswalker Taylor's Aura. +1 attack to everything you control within 4 spaces. This is pretty nasty. Red and black will have a terrible time trying to fight through this because they're range 1 and they're going to try and approach your red Planeswalker, let's face it. So as they try and approach your Planeswalker, they're going to face the wrath of a ton of red figures with +1 power. It is not going to end well. It's pretty easy for a lot of the Planeswalkers and creatures to take advantage of this. It also helps your haste creatures. If you can summon your haste creatures within 4 spaces, you get to boost your haste attacks too. Just really freaking good card. Stubborn Resilience is next. I think I'll put it right here. High good tier feels about right. It's really expensive spell cost wise, but also that you can only play it on a squad that has one figure remaining. Works really nicely on the Firecats, especially on the Kessigs, and on the Flamewing Phoenixes if you can rebirth them back to full strength. The scenarios in which you can play it can be limited sometimes, and that kind of holds it back in my opinion, along with the cost. In the last red card we have Sure Strike. I think I'll put this at the bottom of good. The cost of the spell, along with that you have to kill a creature in combat first, those two combined are annoying and frankly prevent it from being top tier. Like, I like Fire Breathing and Power of Fire because I can play it at the start of my turn before I've moved and attacked with my creatures. Sure Strike kind of suffers in that you're likely playing it after you've moved and attacked with your creatures, so you're oftentimes going to have to wait a turn in order to benefit from Sure Strike's effects. But if you can pull it off, like if your opponent doesn't focus the buff squad down after you've buffed them with Sure Strike, it can definitely get some value. +1 move and +1 power are both very useful. So despite the conditions and the semi-high point cost, I think low good tier is very respectable for this card. Alright, last but not least, we got green. Oh, and look what we have here, Titanic Growth. Oh, it's hard to compare Titanic Growth to these other cards here. I think I'm going to place it just below Twin Flame. This is a very good card. I think Twin Flame is slightly more busted, honestly. To give a squad or hero +3 power until end of turn is obscene. This works really well with the Eldrazi Ruiner, and of course #1 here, the Kessigs. Double attacking with a Kessig who gets +3 power is extremely powerful. I think the synergy with the Kessigs and the Ruiner alone just absolutely rocket this card to top tier, to being one of the best spells in the game, but still really useful even with Palmer Roots, with like Blues Heroes if you're using Kiora. Just +3 power for a single creature is so good in almost any circumstance. Just go and murder people with it, please. Next up is Bountiful Harvest. This is pretty much going to be even with Near Death. I'm going to place it just a tad higher because it heals 3. Although it costs 15 versus Near Death's 10, I still think it's a little bit better to combine more healing into a single card the way Bountiful does. Healing your Planeswalker, keeping your Planeswalker alive, this is a no-brainer. You want your Planeswalker to live as long as possible. I'm not going to expand on this, just use this card in your green decks. Earthen Arms. I'm going to go low, or I'm going to go high decent. Two major reasons. The cost. The cost is dumb. Green has no heroes. Mono Green has no heroes other than the Eldrazi Ruiner, and he's perfectly fine to use this spell on. But for 30 points for this to only work for one turn, you can still use it also with Blues Heroes, with Kiora. The cost of this one really hampers it, especially when compared to White's Chaplet's Blessing. Had Earthen Arms cost 20 points like that does, I think I could bump this up a tier easily to like high good. Equestrian Skill. This is an okay card. I think I'll go high decent. It's nice. It's pretty similar to Goblin Warpaint, honestly, in that, like, after moving and attacking, at the end of that creature's turn, you may then move them 2 spaces. So it allows you to take over glyphs if your creatures are undamaged, which I think is my primary qualm with this. You can repeatedly use its effect as long as your creatures remain undamaged, and green does support that to an extent with a little bit of squad healing. It's a decent card, mostly hampered by the condition of having to be undamaged. Elvish Blade Finesse. I think I'll put this low good tier. The ability to deal 2 damage to a target figure, which means a Planeswalker, I think makes this card pretty good by itself. It's unfortunate that it also requires that you have to have 2 elves, and I don't particularly find that the Elf Rangers or the Path Wardens are like meta or game breaking. Like if there was a good elf squad, this would be a better spell. But since the elves are only mediocre at best, I think brought down a little bit because of that. Fog. I think I'd put Fog just above Stubborn Resilience. If your opponent attempts to come in and attack them, they might effectively waste a whole attack phase trying to deal with your squad. The problem is, since this is an enchantment, blue unsummons you and Fog goes away. black and red can kill you with spells before they even attack you, which means fog isn't preventing your guys from dying. White can insta-kill you through fog even after that because of Fell the Mighty. Doesn't do damage, it destroys. Silver Strike, Sunlance even says, so like if I attack you, and then you flip fog, well, so Sunlance just says I have to attack you. I attacked you, so I'm going to kill you anyway. There's enough against it that it definitely can't be top tier, but it's still very good. Groundswell is next. I think Groundswell can go up here. Top tier, absolutely. Pretty similar to Titanic Growth. +3 power for your Planeswalker. Luckily, Green's Planeswalkers have range, so this is going to hurt your opponent to be shot with big damage at range. It combines well with Leaf Arrow. When you're rolling, like when you're Nissa, Arlen, Kiora, if you can get High Ground, Predatory Strike with this, you can pretty easily be rolling 8 dice. That's going to hurt. Very few negatives with this, especially because it's Planeswalker. You're very often going to have the chance to use this. 3 additional dice one time is going to pan out in your favor. Leaf Arrow is next. I think I'll put Leaf Arrow right here, below top tier. This feels about right. As I mentioned with Groundswell, this combines really well with Groundswell, especially if you just destroy it. You effectively have +5 power for 1 turn. But Leaf Arrow is still really good because while you remain unengaged, which again, all the green Planeswalkers have pretty good range, you can very easily benefit from a lot of Leaf Arrow procs before you eventually decide to destroy it anyway. The cost kind of... I mean, if it was 10, it would easily be up there with Groundswell. It's 20, so I think this is why it's down here. Otherwise, fantastic card. Moonlight Hunt. We go from high tier to trash tier very quickly. I like it, I think, a little bit more through Rolling Trembler. 30 points. The cost alone is really rough on this card. Combined with the fact that it only works when there's transform figures around, and it only affects creatures, which SMH my head bad, honestly. There's no reason to use this at that cost with that many stipulations. This is not good enough. Not nearly good enough. This should have costed like 10 points, frankly. And if it was 10 points, maybe I'd drop it into decent tier. Don't use Moonlight Hunt. Rabid Bite. This is an okay spell. Kind of suffers the same fate as Earthen Arms in that this would be better if green had more heroes, because this generally wants you to use a figure with big stats so that that big figure can smash some little figure and then take no damage or very little damage in return. And so I would highly suggest using this with the Ruiner. With the Pomeroots, it's okay for what it offers and for the potential that your opponent hits you back, and that green has no enchantments which buffs their power and or toughness like permanently. This can be tough to use, so this is why it is where it is. Next up, Primeval Light. I think right here. I like it about right here. So the number one thing holding this card back absolutely is its cost. 35 points is a lot. But Primeval Light is so good for dealing with white, black, and blue, especially blue. You can get rid of things like Aether Spouts, Call to Heal, Scatter Arc. If they stole your enchantment, you can get rid of that way. It does kill your own enchantments, which, in my opinion, trying to use it with like Arlen is, or even sometimes Kiora, it's less good with the dual colored builds because green usually has less permanent enchantments, so they don't really have many of their own enchantments to kill. Very good card. I would consider it for most Nissa decks, a little bit less so for dual colored. Natural End, low decent. This only heals squads and it also deletes their enchantments, which can go both ways. Generally is a positive thing for green though, because green doesn't have a lot of enchantments that they care to keep on their squads long term. This generally works as an anti-black card if black puts things like Creeping Dread, Crippling Blight on your squad. This removes those, and you can heal up to 2 damage from that squad, which is usable, like at least a little bit of healing to help with things like equestrian skill. Of course, with this card's niche against black is that black often outright kills squads, especially in Killing Wave will outright kill all of green's squad creatures. So it can be hard to use effectively against black. If this worked for heroes as well as squads, like if you could remove up to 2 damage from a hero and delete enchantments off of that hero, this would be a lot better. Next up is Rapid Withdrawal. I'm gonna go top of poor tier. Despite this being 5 points, green having very few ways to buff their squad's power, means rapid withdrawal is not going to be easy to trigger, mostly only useful on the pummel roots. And for that, it's decent enough, especially at 5 points. Predatory Strike is next. I think I'm going to put it in low top tier. It's really similar, honestly, to Leaf Arrow. The difference is you have to be on high ground, and I like Leaf Arrow more for that I can remain out of engagement, even if it means like I have to give up high ground, at least I'm running away from engagement. Predatory Strike works while you're in engagement. That means you're going to have to go and fight for that high ground and probably sit on the high ground in order to maintain Predatory Strike. Sometimes that means your Planeswalker can be overwhelmed, though, by tons of squads, which you have to be careful of as green because you don't have things like Fell the Mighty or Killing Wave or, you know, a lot of the auto kills that some of the other colors have. Still a very good card while you can maintain high ground, absolutely. Naturalize. I think low poor feels perfectly fine. This is too expensive for what it does, and the fact that your opponent can attack your enchanted squad with a figure that doesn't even have enchantments, and you still have to flip Naturalize, and therefore destroy nothing with it, means that you just lose a 20-point spell for absolutely no reason. It's decent enough when it can trigger, and at least it kills enchantments, but it doesn't do anything else. Like, that attack is still going through. I think more times than not, it doesn't quite contribute enough at 20 points. Paths Revealed is next. I think I'll put it right here. +3 move, even if this was a sorcery, just to be able to play it and say, give me +3 move for 1 turn, worth it alone. That is an enchantment that can last longer? Wow. But oftentimes, you only need to play this at the start of your turn with like a squad that you're about to take a turn with. Pummel Roots especially love this card. And then your Pummel Roots now have 8 move, and you can walk up to them and destroy them. This is just a good card. Sheltering Word is next. Probably not better than Rabid Bite. I think I could see putting it low decent. Suffers the same issues with Natural End in that your creatures can often die before you ever have the chance to heal them. But I think I would place it higher mostly for Disengage. Disengage can be quite useful, especially when you combine with things like Paths Revealed. Getting Disengage and moving a ton of spaces through your opponent's creatures feels really good in the right situation. Can be hard to pull off though at the right time. This is a reasonably useful card. Nissa's Expedition. I like it about here. High good tier feels right. +3 move and Disengage for your Planeswalker is beyond useful. Disengage is huge when the Planeswalker is your #1 figure. Disengage alone is really why you use this card. +3 move can be useful in the right situations. Save it for when your Planeswalker gets surrounded and run away for free. Snare the Skies is next. I could see it going above Groundswell, but definitely below the rest of these. Any of your ranged squads get +2 range and an additional power for the whole squad. Kestings love this. Elf Rangers love this. Not much else to be said, honestly. Combine this card with any other green spell, or I guess red power buffs even if you're Arlinn. But like add Titanic Growth in there. Now you have one of your guys attacking with +4 power. This just enables so many shenanigans at extreme range that just use it. You have any of your green squads in there with the range, use it. Sky Reaping is up next. I'm trying to see where I would put this. Yeah, right about here then. It's a good card. The draw aspect, primarily for the draw aspect. You might be confused now. All you need is a green creature on the field and you can draw a card. Whether or not you deal damage to flying creatures, which may or may not be near this green creature in question, does not matter. You get to draw a card. It effectively reduces your deck to 11 cards, 195 points, which isn't terrible, especially for mono green. But the bonus of being able to hit White's Heroes and Red's Phoenixes is pretty good. White's Heroes, I think, are quite meta, so this to help chip them down and for the extra draw is pretty much worth it alone. 5 points and this thing is total gravy. The last card, oh, but absolutely not least, is Overrun. I think Overrun will go right above Snare the Skies. Just like Inspired Charge, which isn't far down from here, Overrun, all you really want it for is +2 power until end of turn. That is worth it alone. It is actually more expensive than Inspired Charge, but I put it above Inspired Charge because green has the range that is completely necessary to abuse +2 power. Elf Rangers, Kestic Rangers. Kestic Rangers alone is really enough to make this card terrifying. If White had creatures that had range better than 3, Inspired Charge would probably be higher. But Overrun on any of green's creatures, and even red, if you're using Arlinn, like you use Overrun to give the Firecats trample, you're gonna shit on a lot of things. Trample plus 2 power for Firecats is obscene. Overrun is an extremely good card. If you have any green squads, you should be using it. Use the plus 2 power. Don't worry about trample while attacking an adjacent figure. Just use plus 2 power and shoot shit down from range. Very good card. And a great way to end the tier list. This is a huge tier list, and this took quite some time. Oh my goodness. Let's take one last look at all the tiers. Look at our top tier. Beautiful. And we'll scroll on down. Here's our good tier. Decent. Man. Poor tier. And trash tier with our ever terrible Harness the Storm. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please hit up the description, find our Discord, find the template for this tier maker list. Share with us what you think of the spells. If you haven't watched my color tier list videos or my Planeswalker and or creature tier maker tier list videos, check them out. We'll see you in the next AOTP video.